Number 3. Meet choreographer Seke Chimutengwende. Seke is a choreographer, performer, movement director and teacher. He's a 44-year-old tall and slim man with short brown afro hair. His skin tone is light brown and he sports a goatee and a moustache. Seke is of mixed heritage, half English and half Zimbabwean. Seke uses choreography to experiment with collectivity and alternative approaches to authorship and governance, playing with form to shift and question hierarchies. In addition to It Begins in Darkness, Seke has also choreographed a group work for Kanduko Dance Company called In Worlds Unknown, which premiered in October 2022. As a performer, Seke has been practicing completely improvised performance since 2006 and is currently exploring long solo improvisation performances of 50 to 60 minutes. He has performed over 70 improvisations internationally and has also worked with Deviate Physical Theatre and Lost Dog. He is currently in a new work called If All Else Fails with Forced Entertainment and lectures in improvisation and composition at London Contemporary Dance School. We spoke to Seke to understand his process for It Begins in Darkness more deeply.
For me, I felt like there are these issues around the legacies of slavery, the legacies of colonialism that, I think most of the time we either ignore them or try to ignore them and get on with our lives. And I think what I wanted to do with this was to make a dance piece and not ignore those things and have them in the room, and sort of see what kind of show do you make if you kind of have an awareness or a connection to those legacies, that sense of being haunted by it. What happens? So in a way, it feels like a kind of an experiment in that sense. There's a lot of physicality in the show. There's a lot of images. There's quite a bit of humor, although, maybe perverse humor. I don't know, or something that some people might find funny, but others not. I think for me, it's a sort of processing space.
It Begins in Darkness emerged from an exploration of Afrofuturism with choreographer Alexandrina Hemsley, where Seke began linking his own experiences of racism to a fictionalized history of the universe. Kindred and Wild Siege, two novels by sci-fi fantasy author Octavia Butler, inspired Seke to think about horror in relation to slavery, while Black American choreographer Ralph Lemon's investigation of the definition of blackness also became an important reference point. Seke spoke to us about discovering Jordan Peele's films. The whole cast went together to see his third feature film, Nope, and beginning his own research with the question, what could a black horror dance piece be?
It's not horror as in there's not kind of somebody chasing me down the street right now kind of thing, but there's a sense of haunting and definitely in buildings in the UK, and in any, probably most venues, theatres, there's some connection back to that money, most likely. That was the metaphor for me, was the haunted house that we're sort of living in. And it's not, I guess, maybe different to Black Holes, the other piece I made. It's not sort of, for me, it's not about a kind of black experience. It's about a sort of, I feel like everybody has this experience in different ways of being haunted by these histories. It's not like some people are just like untouched by it. It's just different for different people. And I sort of feel like everyone's implicated in it in some way. And I guess sort of using dance as a sort of, maybe as a kind of exorcism of that, or an attempt at exorcising. Yeah, not that it's like, I think dancing around on stage is going to like solve inequality and all of that. But I feel like as a sort of like coming to terms with something, even if it's on a tiny level, those are the themes, I think.
There are no named characters or roles in this piece. Centering the performers as dancers first and foremost, Seke did not bring character motivation or autobiographical backstory into the rehearsal space. He speaks about the task-based improvisational scores that the dance is based on.
Yeah, we worked with a sort of the idea of recoiling and kind of moving away from something nasty, and that happens sort of in, there's sort of two different ways that happens at different points in the show, quite different ways. So, and there's some material that happens the first time with text, and then it comes back later, but without the text. So they're speaking while they're doing this material. It's as if they're sort of conjuring up images of rooms that aren't actually there, but they're sort of conjuring them up through movement. And then that movement comes back later, but without the text. So there's quite a bit of recurring motifs, I'd say. Yeah.
The choreography is highly physical, where even the moments of stillness can be taxing. Seke explains how it feels in the body to perform certain sections.
I'd say it's very athletic, the show. So the dancers are quite often out of breath, and they often, or there's moments where they need to use their voices and they're quite out of breath. Like there's a moment where they're running in a circle and they're kind of singing quite high notes. And they always tell me that that's really hard because they're completely out of breath at that point. So yeah, I'd say it's quite a sort of athletic, powerful show in that way, physically, and they're very sweaty, quite quickly. And I think something that's quite sort of particular about the show as a performer to do is that they are often changing state quite drastically, sort of from one moment to the next. So they might be doing something that's like really fast and physical, and then they switch to doing something that's really gentle and soft, that kind of thing, or something that's very sort of light and silly to doing something that's quite dark and sort of ugly. So that there's a lot of, I think that's sort of quite a sort of technical thing to be able to do, and they're really good at that. It's also, I mean, it's something that we spent a lot of time practicing. So we had this singer called Randolph Matthews come into the rehearsals, and he's like super physical, and he was like getting us to embody states of different animals and different instruments with our bodies and our voices. And I think that really helped with the piece. So we did sort of stuff like that was sort of about finding both sort of extreme differences and also subtle differences, and finding, sort of being able to sort of access both of those things.
We asked Seke what his number one favourite section is, but he cheated and gave us two.
I like how the last section, which is sort of made up of lots of mini sections, doesn't really make any sense. It sort of just has all these different feelings and patterns. It feels very fragmented, and I like that. There's another section I really like which I mentioned already, where they're sort of pressing into each other and swaying, and at the same time they're individually switching between laughing, crying, and wailing. And then one of them breaks off and just does that by herself. To watch, it's sort of quite disturbing.
Seke speaks often of the humour and absurdity that runs through the performance, but also makes an important point about the ethics of working with emotionally taxing themes.
But I like the feeling that I don't feel like they're disturbed doing it. There's something really important about that for me, sort of politically. It's not a work that's like asking them to sort of drag everything out of their souls for the sake of an audience. There's something about that. I think, especially with the subject matter the racial dynamics that I feel like, I just didn't want to go there.
You can find out more about Seke, his practice, and his other work at his website, www.sekechimutengwende.com.